I want to thank the City of Stewart for hosting us. Y'all probably know me pretty well. I'm Mark Perry. I'm the Executive Director of Florida Oceanographic, but also the President and Chair of the Rivers Coalition. I'm joined up here with some of our board members. Some are in the audience, and our members are here too. So kind of one of the things we'll get started with is our kind of member recognition or roll call, but I wanted to at first get us started with pledge to the flag. So if you would stand and join me, appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, everybody. Just to start with a couple of brief comments, I appreciate Charles and everybody to carry on the meeting back in April. April 25th was also the same day for the South Florida Ecosystem Task Force. That's a big, long name for a group that's formed by a lot of agencies like Department of Interior, NOAA, all kinds of agencies that monitor and the Everglades restoration projects and things going through. They held their biannual meeting down in the Miccosukee tribe down in Miami. So it was kind of necessary to be there. But thank you, Charles, for doing that. We have a lot of great things today to our agenda. So we're going to kind of move through that. If you haven't got an agenda, there is one available. Thank you. And online, if you could mute, if everybody could stay on mute until, and we can't ask questions verbally, as I understand. You could type in the chat. So if you could type in the chat your name and your organization you represent, that'll tell us whether you're a member of the coalition. And at this time, I'd kind of like to ask all the coalition members or delegates of the organizations to stand, be recognized, please. If you're a member of the coalition, member of our board, obviously coalition members, stand and be recognized. Thank you. Thanks everybody for attending. Appreciate it. There you go. See, I know we have name badges out there that Mickey's provided. I really appreciate that. And we're going to be emailing out to all the members kind of our, I want to mail out the kind of log that we have of all the members to get your addresses, emails, everything, to make sure we've got everything correct and to try to encourage more participation. You know, we have 105 member organizations to this group, and 26 years ago, 1998 is when we first formed. It's grown quite a bit since I've been around. So we're looking to try to increase, and we have some new members joining us, and I'm going to talk about that real quick. We wanted to acknowledge, though, we've had a couple of board members retire from the board recently. Blair Wickstrom, many of you knew Blair for many years. Blair is one of the sons of Carl Wickstrom, and Carl was on our board for many years and a very vocal advocate for our rivers since he moved up here from Miami area way back. And we knew Carl, and then of course Blair took on that with his representation there from Florida Sportsman and all, but he's really been a real good voice as well and helped organize. We're kind of sad to see him go, but he's taken on some other roles in education and things like that. So Nick Mater is also retired off. You know Nick. Nick has been Dolphin Project for many years, and she's done a great lot of work with, of course, the River Kids. So we're kind of, again, sad to see her step down, but you know, other things take precedent. And now we have a new board member, Casey Darling Niffen. Casey, stand up. She is representing with the Florida Wildlife Federation, which is also applying as a new member, and the board on Tuesday accepted her membership application from the Florida Wildlife Federation. It was an organization, and we're excited about that. But Casey's been around for a while. Casey's had a lot of great experience with Florida Oceanographic, actually, as advocacy coordinator, and also with now with the Wildlife Federation. But she's very active and also in River Kids as well. So Casey, come on up. I want to give you a chance to say a few words, if you would. Great. All right, Casey.
This one, yeah. Is this on?
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. I just want to thank this board for even thinking of me to be a part of this, be a member of the board. And a member of this community, it's really special to come out here month after month and see how many people show up to listen and learn, and also use their voices to advocate for our waters and making them a cleaner and healthier place. So I appreciate all of you. I appreciate being welcomed so generously to the board and in this community. I also just want to say a few words thanking Blair Wickstrom for his time and his commitment and dedication to this board. And of course, to Nick Mader, who was a champion of getting young people involved. We have a river kid grown up and now in the environmental workforce, which is just amazing to see. And I hope that me and other river moms, Kelly Dore is here. She's our other river mom, Sabrina. I hope that we can carry on that legacy, and in 15, 20 years, we have a new generation of river kids working and fighting for our waterways. So thank you so much. I also want to thank this board for welcoming the Florida Wildlife Federation to be a member of the coalition. I am the Conservation Policy Director. I want to make sure I get this right. And our mission is to conserve Florida's wildlife habitats and natural resources through education, advocacy, and science-based stewardship. So we appreciate being part of this cause. It is so personal to me and so important to me. So I am thrilled to be here and keep championing for our waterways. So thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Great. We've now going to move into our presentation. We've got a special guest coming up to talk with us, Jason Tutoy, but I want to have Eve Samples. Eve come up and, oh, here we are. I'm sorry, Eve, and introduce Jason for us and the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone. How are you today? The topic of the day, as the agenda suggests, is toxic algae, and what we've done about it here in our community and what we haven't done about it at government agency levels, and something very tangible that we can do, and everyone in this coalition and in this room can help support. So let's rewind the clock for a minute before I introduce our featured speaker. I want to know how many of you were here in 2018 in this community. Okay, so you remember the toxic algae blooms on the St. Lucie River. And you might remember that just across the St. Lucie River, almost directly from where we are now, Central Marine was ground zero. And at one point, toxins, microcystin in particular, measured at 110 parts per billion in that marina. That wasn't even the highest reading, but it's one that, as I was preparing to orient you today, I noticed, and that is 10 times too toxic to touch, according to experts. So that was 2018. The year after that, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency issued recommended standards for the toxins in microcystin, which is the formal name for blue-green algae. So the EPA said they recommended that they should adopt these toxins. The state of Florida was asked to do so and failed to act. So it's been 6 years since we had terribly toxic, dangerous algae right across from where we're sitting right now. And the state of Florida has failed to take adequate steps to protect the public from that danger, to notify us, to monitor, and more importantly, to address the water quality issues that are at the root of those toxic algae blooms, nitrogen, phosphorus, and other water quality issues. So that's the bad news. The good news is we're here today to talk about what can be done. Last week, right here in this room, the Stewart City Commission, thank you, Commissioner Campbell Rich, who's here, voted to support a petition to the Environmental Protection Agency that would ask the EPA to use its authority under the Clean Water Act to force the state of Florida to act, to do what it hasn't done since 2018 and 2016. So that was a preliminary vote. Stewart City Commission is going to take a formal vote next Tuesday at its meeting. And we're very grateful that the commissioners unanimously voiced support last week, and we expect them to issue that final approval this week. So none of this progress that we are talking about would be happening without the Center for Biological Diversity and Jason Tutoy, who's going to talk to you about this petition being filed. Jason is not only an excellent lawyer, he's very familiar with this issue because he grew up right here in Martin County. So he's seen the toxic algae blooms, not just of 2018, but also 2016 and 2013. Jason has drafted an excellent legal petition, a formal request to EPA that will be filed next week, asking the EPA to protect our communities, protect our waterways, set these recreational standards to protect our public health. So Jason, his official title is Senior Attorney with the Center for Biological Diversity. He's now based in Winter Park, and he oversees the center's Florida and Caribbean region and does really important environmental law work. So without further ado, I want to introduce Jason Tatoy.
Well, good morning, everyone. It feels really good to be back in Stuart, to see so many friends and colleagues over the last 20 years that I've worked on issues here in Florida. It's just a testament to the support that this community has for water quality and all the great work you've done throughout the years. So thank you for having me this morning. I guess I wanted to start by just kind of going over what we intend to do next week, which is to file a petition for rulemaking to EPA, asking them to set water quality standards in the state of Florida for two types of cyanotoxins. One's microcystins, as Eve alluded to earlier, and the other is Psilodrops permopsin. These are probably the two most common types of cyanotoxins as a product of algae blooms here in South Florida. There are many others, but those are the two that are most, I think, most familiar with. So what are water quality standards? So water quality standards are essentially those levels that, if met or achieved, maintain a designated use of a particular water body. So water bodies in the state are classified, they have a classification system: fishable, swimmable, drinking water. And so when you meet those standards, you keep all those uses in place. When you don't meet those standards, those waters are deemed impaired and they need to be restored. So these types of criteria that we're hoping the EPA would establish are aimed specifically at human health. There's two types of water quality standards for the most part: aquatic life and human health. And so this is really aimed at protecting human health because, as we know, there are so many adverse effects to cyanotoxins on the human body. So what are we hoping to achieve? Like, why are we doing this? So first, we want to really maintain and restore water quality throughout the state of Florida. And we do so through these very specific numeric performance measures. Currently, there's no numeric standard for cyanotoxins in the state. So this provides clear benchmarks that you have to meet in order to meet those water quality uses. And I think secondly, the aim here is to really improve Florida's water quality monitoring program, as in addition to how it issues human health advisories, health alerts, cautions, these types of advisories. And I'm going to go into a little bit now, just a couple minutes, as to those two primary objectives. So first, maintain and restore water quality. We think these cyanotoxins are essential because existing standards that we have on the books are not aimed at human health. When we talk about algae blooms, we look at it through primarily one driver of algae blooms, which is nutrient pollution, i.e. phosphorus and nitrogen. I think we're all pretty familiar with where that comes from. In the case of Lake Okeechobee and the estuaries, predominantly runoff north of the lake, agricultural, municipal, and industrial. Flows down, we develop these blooms, it's released out. While those are important, they don't specifically get to human health, and they actually, even more so, they don't consider all those other drivers, so to speak, of what makes algae blooms form, proliferate, and just sustain over time. And namely, that's higher water temperatures and changes in precipitation patterns, water levels and flows and velocities. You have all these different types of contributing factors, not just nutrients. While important, it's more than that. And so what we're trying to accomplish here is to force state decision makers to take those things into account when they're setting out ways to better manage and restore these waters through the various regulatory mechanisms they have in place. Secondly, my second point is to how would this improve human health advisories? Right now, we depend on a qualitative-based system, and that's driven by either the public reports an algae bloom or a member of a state agency sees an algae bloom, staff does, and then it triggers monitoring and sampling. This is going to go a step further. By having these standards, the state's going to have to engage in more routine monitoring because it's just simply part of the framework under the Clean Water Act in terms of how this is administered. From there, we hope, and we really do believe that it's going to provide much more real-time and accurate information when these microsystems and Cildrops peropsin levels are detected, that we're not just dependent upon seeing a visible bloom. The issue there is that these cyanotoxins don't necessarily begin and end at the point in which you see a bloom and you see it dissipate. They can occur beforehand and they can often linger afterwards. Cildrops peropsin is actually not even mostly associated with a visible surface bloom. So that's a problem. If we don't have fully informed ways in which we go about alerting the public, they may not fully understand what the situation is on the water. Just because it blooms away, it may still have high levels. Or vice versa, the bloom may not have even formed yet, and we may have high levels. So those are the two principal, two primary objectives here. So why EPA? Why not the state? Well, we tried the state 5 years ago. Today is the 5-year anniversary from when we petitioned the state of Florida to do this. Why do we petition the state of Florida? Because, and I want to emphasize this point, because there's a big misconception here. The state of Florida, for decades, like all states in America, have been tasked with the primary responsibility to administer the water quality program under the Clean Water Act. It's not the Army Corps of Engineers. It's not EPA. EPA retains an oversight authority. We asked the state 5 years ago, and it wasn't just us. The governor's Florida Blue-Green Algae Task Force, they recommended a standard. Other counties, cities have written in saying they want a standard. Other organizations, businesses, I've seen comment letters from a very diverse group of folks all across the state wanting this. And your elected officials. So that hasn't happened. To make matters worse, 5 years ago, they were supposed to be reviewing their current standards for a whole host of other types of pollutants. That hasn't been completed. That's required under federal law. So what is EPA supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? If there's inaction, we feel that now's the time to say something about it and ask EPA to step in. And why now? Well, in those 5 years, I think we've seen things not really improve much. And while I no longer live in Martin County, and I live a couple hours north, I've seen things deteriorate elsewhere in the state. And so things have to change. Current practices and standards just aren't cutting it. And so we hope that this petition will be able to compel further action and really start to clean things up. I know it's frustrating. We've seen a lot of promises being made, and this is in hopes we can just provide a little bit more of an impetus for the state to carry out its responsibility, which is the primary responsibility it has under the Clean Water Act. This is what Congress gave the states decades ago. Again, I want to emphasize that because we often hear about the Army, and believe me, I understand the frustrations we have with the discharges and the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers is not principally responsible for water quality. And we have to make that clear, and we have to focus on how are these blooms beginning in the first place? What are these inputs? Where is this coming from, and who's responsible for it? And the state has that role. So I just want to say in closing, I grew up here. I was born over in Martin Memorial. Went to St. Mike's, I guess now the Pine School, graduated from Martin County High. This is kind of like in my blood, so to speak. If it wasn't playing baseball growing up, it was fishing. And I've spent so many countless days on the IRL and the St. Lucie that it really imprinted upon me just how special of a place this is and what we have. And when I came back to Florida to begin my legal career, I literally saw things really deteriorate quickly from that reference point I had growing up. It was really in 04, 05 when we started to really see it hit. And 05, 08, 13, 16, 18, you can start to see a pattern here in 20 years. This has really just proliferated. And I just want to say that I don't think I'm alone. I don't think that my experiences are unique growing up here in Martin County. I absolutely, and I say this to the bottom of my heart, I admire everything you all have been doing, fighting so hard. It's a testament to this community that regardless of any political affiliations, social groups, where you live, we have a common bond here. And that is just, that's something that you all should really appreciate and admire. And I want to thank you all for all the work you've been doing over the years to put an end to this. And so my parting message is, what can you all do? Next week, we're filing this petition for rulemaking under the Administrative Procedure Act with the EPA. I invite you to please just, if you can, send a letter of support or voice your support, saying that this is something that you value and is important to you. And I think that will go a long way in really having EPA take a hard look at this. It's, again, this reflects a broad coalition of interest groups. And I think that's really important here when we talk about water quality and a pathway forward. So that's my presentation today, I guess, and I'm happy to take any questions and hopefully answer them if time allows. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. We appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. If we could have a few questions, I wanted to let you know too that we are, the board has taken some action to give letter of support, as Jason mentioned, and we've already kind of drafted up some letters of support from our organizations and from the coalition to the three different members of the EPA, including the administrator that it needs to go to. So we'll get that specifically on our website or posted so that if you want to, or your organization can send a letter of support in this petition, we'll let you know that next week once it's currently filed. So we have time for a few questions. So I see some hands. We'll start over there. Greg in the background and then go to you. Yep.
Hold on, so people can be on Zoom, sorry. Do we have any records of people who've been sickened, injured, or died from the algae blooms, and could those people be plaintiffs in a class action lawsuit?
Okay, that's a good question. I am not aware of one singular entity that keeps those records. What I am aware of that certain governmental agencies and organizations have done studies on this, both in Florida and nationwide. CDC, EPA, and certain national universities, the Ohio State University, for instance, did a recent study out of Fort Pierce. I believe they looked at the kind of a 12-year study. I do not know, however, whether or not there's a clearinghouse or a database or Florida Department of Health or whoever else has any such information. I can't opine on the second question, unfortunately. I'm an environmental land use attorney, and it's not an excuse, but I can't tell you from a plaintiff's lawyer standpoint whether or not that would be a viable case, but I appreciate the question.
Hi. Oh, it is. Okay. I am a supporter of the Center for Biological Diversity. I do get your emails. Will you be sending out a petition so that we can sign that to support you? Okay, that's important.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned it because I forgot to say that. About a week after this petition is filed, we will be submitting an alert out to members, supporters, to the public with an ask that if you do support this, please sign an accompanying petition, so to speak. It's not a legal petition, not a petition for rulemaking, but more like a citizen petition in support of what we're doing. At that point, I know several organizations are going to be doing the same. We will then submit that to the agencies at a later date.
What I would also like to mention is that our Representative Overdorf, I have met with him. He's provided me with all these wonderful bills that provide more oversight by the DEP. Unfortunately, they are not providing any funding, so they cannot do any monitoring. The same thing when it came for speaking to the Department of Agriculture for best management program. They will only handle that within the BMAP areas. And so that is not helpful because, again, they are not funding any monitoring. So this is very important. Now, I'd also like to know if you are supporting the petition for the right to clean water. That is going to allow for more oversight to prevent rather than just clean up pollution. So that, I think that is an important thing also for us to work on. Thank you.
Yep, another question over here.
Since the St. Lucie and Lake O is a federally recognized entity, the Okeechobee Waterway, can you clarify, is this legal petition pertaining to that federal entity, or is this petition for all waters within the state of Florida?
It's all waters, and specifically it's class 1, 2, and 3. So those are the we have a classification system of 5 to 6, depending on how you look at it, types of classes of waters in Florida. 1, 2, and 3, things like fishable, swimmable, potable drinking water. Those are primarily what we're looking at here. As you go down that list, it's things like industrial waters. That would not be implicated here.
Thank you for being here. And by the way, he wrote an excellent law review article that I, as an attorney, kind of fell into. I told him before the meeting just accidentally a couple of weeks ago, but also I think Eve sent it to me. But my question is, well, first off, just as an attorney looking at this, to clarify what's happening here is that under the Clean Water Act, the states are this is state law versus federal law. What we're saying is the state has just failed to act, and under the Clean Water Act, eventually the federal government needs to just step in and do it for the state of Florida. They're not going to do it, right? And so you're basically writing a letter saying, Florida's had its chance to do this, and now it's time for the federal government to do it for the state.
Yeah, and to put a finer point on it, EPA in 2019 issued these final recommended guidelines. States are not required to actually establish those specific recommended standards. What they're required to do, and what they told us they were going to do, is complete their triennial review, which is this review every 3 years to assess their current standards to see if they're protective enough. If they're protective enough to meet the requirements of the Clean Water Act, then they can explain to EPA why cyanotoxin standards are unnecessary. They haven't done either. They haven't done it for cyanotoxins, and they haven't done it for everything else. So that's the problem and the predicament we're in right now with our petition. So to answer your question, EPA has the authority under a very specific provision of the Clean Water Act under 303, where if a certain water quality standard is necessary to quote unquote meet the requirements of the act, and I won't get into all the details, EPA has that oversight authority to do it. And they have done this on many occasions in the past in other states.
And just as a follow-up, your letter is just microcystin, or it's my understanding in trying to learn this stuff that, we're all focused on nitrogen and phosphorus, but for a lot of water bodies, we don't have a nitrogen, including Lake Okeechobee, if I'm correct. Is that another thing too, that it seems like there should be standards for that?
Yeah, we believe there certainly should be nitrogen standards for the lake. This petition, however, aims at microcystins and Psilodraph spermopsin cyanotoxins. I don't know in the future, something might, what we might be looking at with nitrogen in the lake, but I know that is, I know many scientists have said, this needs to be done. And so this petition doesn't specifically address that, but I absolutely agree that's warranted.
All right, thanks.
I just wanted to piggyback on that second toxin, cylindrospermopsin. Some of you might remember 2 years ago, that was the toxin that contaminated the city of West Palm Beach's water supply. They used Lake Okeechobee as a backup water supply. So really important toxin to monitor for public safety.
It's great. And also as a reminder, remember the classifications 1, 2, and 3, and so forth for not only, the basically standards for animal life, but also health and safety for humans. So when you look at class 1 water body is a potable water body, and Lake Okeechobee is a class 1 water body. So y'all know we've had algae blooms in the lake, and we've seen them coming in from the lake to the estuary since 2005. And that's really critical to understand. When this first started happening, I contacted the utility authority up in Okeechobee. The city of Okeechobee has their water supply coming from the lake. And people there needed to know, hey, this is a toxic cyanobacteria bloom that's happening right there at your drawing in for water supply. So class 1 waters as well as other water bodies. And we are so appreciative of people like Jason in particular for bringing this up and making sure it carries on and drives home to EPA and to the state of Florida to do the right thing and implement these standards. And, we will continue to bring up and monitor other standards that impair our waters. That's how we came up with a total maximum daily load standard for this estuary, for instance, for nitrogen and phosphorus, as Todd's brought up and others. But we need this standard for the cyanobacteria for all the agencies to be able to regulate and manage the water correctly. So let's thank Jason again for his expertise. Thank you very much. All right, we want to go into our kind of agency reports. We've got the Martin County, City of Stewart, and we have the Water District, and we'll start off with Martin County. I think John had to go, but Amy Easton is here from Martin County. And a brief, I see Ben is here from City of Stewart. We also would like to recognize, right?
Thank you. Amy Easton, Environmental Resource Engineer for Martin County. John had to step out. I know some of you saw him, but he had to step out for a moment. Our report is basically, we also continue to monitor the river and the estuary. We've been looking at some samples. Cyanobacteria samples had been taken on 96th Street Bridge, Palm City Bridge and S80. They're all pending right now. And we have also have not seen any exceedances in I never can say this word, intracoxi. Bingo, never can say it. So there's no exceedances and those have to be in good range. I think last meeting, I mentioned that we were going to be meeting the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to review the TMDL and the BMAP. And we did have that review with them. The meeting was on May 9th, and we got news that they're going to be updating the BMAP by June of 2025. It's part of that 5-year update. And during that update, they're going to be remodeling the waters. They're also going to be pulling out the community development districts in the BMAP. They also get an allocation. There's several CDDs that have been developed in the St. Lucie County area, and they're going to get their own allocations. So that's good news. They're also going to be redistributing those allocations. We're also going to supply them the Indiantown boundary because then they're also going to be getting their allocations as well. And they're going to be looking at the milestones and extending those milestones again. We have currently total nitrogen allocation, which we are meeting and actually exceeding that allocation. We're still working on our total phosphorus reductions and evaluating the projects to actually meet those. And we did have an interesting meeting with Charlie Simbler. I'm sure most of you probably know him. He's a former Florida representative and a former elected tax collector in Indian River County. And he's doing these new structures for reefs. So I'll be working, hopefully Mark, I'll be contacting you guys on what he's doing out there. It's pretty neat stuff. And he's looking to do a pilot program. So that's our report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amy. It's great. As she mentioned about the BMAPs, as Ben comes up from City of Stuart, the St. Lucie BMAP had its review in May there, but they are, as she mentioned, kicking the can down the road, so to say, and extending the milestone till, 2032, actually. I think it's another 5 years instead of 15-year implementation, which this started out this BMAP to do in our watershed for 2013, and it was supposed to be completed in 2028. And the starting loads, as we mentioned, are identified. Martin County is part of one of the 22 entities that are doing those reductions through their stormwater projects. As you saw, the district is working on projects within the BMAP, within the watershed to try to get those reductions down so that we can get the loading correct in the estuary to meet the TMDL. I always mention to them too, when we talk about the BMAPs, is they don't count what comes from Lake Okeechobee. And unfortunately they anticipate Lake Okeechobee will meet its BMAP, and it is a far cry from it. That was established back in 2001 when their TMDL. Anyway, a lot said, but Ben, welcome. City of Stuart, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Jason. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Major, see ya. Not to take the wind out of the sails of the Army Corps, but and to take your thunder, but thank you for the LOSUM process and everything that's happened in the last 5 years, if you can believe it. It's been 5 years since we started the LOSUM process. I don't know how many organizations told, it was a couple of hundred of project delivery team members. So for us to finally be getting to this kind of finality, I guess, of that part of the process and that phase to get LOSUM in is really exciting. So if you hadn't heard that news that's coming, is it tomorrow that the report is going to be? Okay, yeah. So yeah, so sorry I took it all away. But I just want to thank everybody in this room first. When I got here in 2016, the first couple of months on the job, and I started off as part of my job being the public information officer for the city. And within the first couple of months of being here, we had the 2016 discharges that all came through. And then a couple of months after that, I learned about the City of Stuart's potable contamination at the time, potential contamination, which was PFAS. So all of this happened all at the same time. And, water, both potable and recreational water, is kind of in danger. And that is how I started my career at the city, to just see one kind of little mini crisis after another. But to recognize also that there are so many people in this room that have been fighting that fight for decades. Really appreciate it, especially your story as well. So I just want to thank everybody in here during the LOSUM process. I don't think you realize sometimes being an individual citizen how important it is to voice your concern, to express your kind of thoughts. It gives weight to what we're doing on your behalf. When you show up, when you speak, that's a democratic process. Without getting too cliche about it, that's what really matters, is showing up and also participating. And that really helped us during the process to be able to vocalize kind of, to advocate for what's going to hopefully benefit the estuary by reducing harm. So we appreciate everybody that's in here. We appreciate the Army Corps and their process, their deliberative process, their professionalism, and definitely, I would say, commitment to excellence, because I was very much impressed in my 5 years dealing with LOSUM and the staff of the Army Corps. So anyway, with that out of the way, I just want to say there's a couple of things that are going to be on our commission meeting on Monday night for agenda items. One you're familiar with, that's the official, Tuesday. Thank you, Commissioner. So Tuesday, right after the holiday, we'll have the first item is going to be kind of the formal adoption and resolution of the approval for the letter that we sent out supporting the petition from the Center for Biological Diversity. And then the second item, I don't know, is Matt from CCA here? I didn't know if he was going to show up today. So the city of Stuart, and I did consult a little bit with Mark a few weeks ago, did speak with FWC and the district about a potential oyster garden project that we were approached from the CCA regarding up to 300 oyster gardens being kind of installed and placed on our dock system here along the whole Riverwalk. So what we had to do was try to figure out, is it going to interfere with any kind of ongoing, measurements and testing and analysis? Is it going to impact? So we went through a little bit of a deliberative process. It was determined, at least from the officials that we spoke to, that there probably won't be any necessary permits. So we're going to try and move forward with that. We'll consult with them a little bit more. But the cool thing is that it's going to be up to 300 oyster gardens hanging from the actual dock side, as many as they can fit all the way through the whole run. And this we call it our healthy trail as well. It's about a mile long if you go all the way down to I think it's Sailor's Return as well. So to have that directly in the water, kind of supporting all of the other projects and the oyster growth and that happen already, to try and support that, and it's coming at free cost to the city. It was something I wanted to mention because I do know that they use volunteers, the CCA, when they do install these. So I didn't know if River Kids would be interested or if anybody else, but I know Matt said he was very open to the idea. So something to talk about, the Rivers Coalition, and I'll certainly have them reach out to you all. But that's all I have for today.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben. Great report. Well, I know we got the district next, but I want to shift that around. Already blew it up to get Major Bell come up here to do kind of a report from the Army Corps, and we appreciate you being here, Major, and thank you very much. And please give us a kind of update on LOSUM stuff. Great.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for Rivers Coalition to be able to provide some comments. So quickly, Lake Okeechobee right now is sitting at 13.36 feet roughly, which is about 1.25 feet lower this time last year. So we see recession across the entire CNSF. So that's great news. And then LOSUM. So LOSUM will actually have the public announcement tomorrow, the 24th of May, which will close on 24 June. This is the final EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement. This is for review from agencies and the public. And then once that's completed, we'll take that package and close that up, and we'll send it to South Atlantic Division in Atlanta for processing. We'll have a record decision. We're looking for around mid-August. So we're trying to work out the details on that. So, but that's our goal, is to hit that. And that'll be exciting news. Currently throughout the system, great recession rates. We still conduct 2,000 CFS to the west through S79, measured at S79, and no expected releases to the east. Just to everyone knows, we're coming up on hurricane season, and understand that, post-storm we'll make assessments based on that. But we feel very optimistic and very positive where the lake is at right now to receive a large body of water. depending on what we see this season, but we're hopeful, and we'll make assessments after that and communicate that with all of our stakeholders and NGOs, state and federal partners across the state as we continue to work through those challenges. That's all I have, Mr. Perry. Dr. Perry?
Oh, great. We appreciate the current Major comment. Also, so my understanding is that this report coming out tomorrow, May 24, is about it's the EIS, the final environmental impact statement.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
That's completed.
Complete. Yep. So the only major change you'll see in that was monitoring. We have to initiate monitoring for some sea turtles and other things. So that's now the responsibility for us to do. So we're trying to work through those details, but that's the biggest change you'll see if you review the document.
So other than that, then it goes to a 30-day comment period, you said?
Correct. 24 June is when that comment, it's not comment period,
Or
it's
just
a review process.
Review process. Okay.
So after 30-day review, 31 days actually a review process from both public and agency reviews. Then it'll come back to us. We'll finalize it and send it up for record decision to Atlanta.
Which is expected in
We expect to see
mid-August?
Mid-August.
Great.
And that can fluctuate based on once it gets to headquarters for review.
And General Hibner will be signing it?
Correct. Yep.
Great. And as you didn't know, General Hibner came out here for an inspection of C-44 when we had a rally. If you remember, we had a rally out by the locks one time. Colonel Booth and General Hibner came out. So we're excited that he'll follow through and finally get LOSUM underway. This, like Ben has said, we've been working on this for 5 years plus, and it's just finally good to see this new LOSUM schedule come into play. It gives the Corps that more flexibility to send this water south and to only do 0 discharges during the whole management band to this estuary, and only minimal discharges to the west coast to the Caloosahatchee. So we're really excited to get that. So it'll immediately go into effect, and we'll be able to see that starting.
Once the signature is
Yeah.
completed, it'll move right into operational phase.
Yep. You had a quick question, Joe?
Okay. For the public, are you going to be like had down at the college?
For public input during this 30-day period or something? You
So
mentioned?
I can't, it's the public release will have the details in that, but I don't think we're going to have a formalized meeting it's not a comment period. It's a review period. All right. So it's not like we can take comments and incorporate those in. It's a review period for everyone to review that document and make sure the changes that were discussed in all these meetings were in effect, and then we can move forward with that.
All right. Well, that's super. Thanks again to Major Bell for being here, making that special announcement. Okay, and now we're going to turn it over to the Water Management District with Glenn. Lawrence Glenn is here with us today, and he had a couple of slides he wanted to talk about the ecological monitoring in the estuaries, and we'll let him take it away for a few minutes there and
Thank you so
go
much.
from that.
I'll try to go through this pretty quickly, but first I wanted to introduce, we have a new Chief Information and Public Policy Officer, and his name is Taniel Kushakian. He's in the back, goes by TK. If you can't pronounce that last name, it's kind of tough, but we're excited to have him. He replaces Sean Cooley. Also wanted to thank Mark for hosting a reception. We had our governing board meeting up here last month, and he hosted a reception at the Oceanographic Center. And we were able to tour that facility, see the remarkable science that's going on there. And so I wanted to come up here and tell you about the stuff that we're doing to complement the great work that they're doing at the Oceanographic. Next slide, please. Okay, if we look at what we're doing, what the Army Corps is doing with inflows to the St. Lucie, you see that blue, the dark blue that's in there, that's when there's lake releases. So we haven't had lake releases since the end of March. And currently you'll see that there's 252 CFS coming into the basin, but that's all basin runoff. That's not coming out of the lake or S80. Next slide. When you look at what salinity is doing throughout, we have 3 different sites that we monitor. We monitor HR1, which is up in the North Fork, the US1 bridge, and the A1A bridge. And you see salinities are roughly between 20 and 30. The high end for optimal conditions for adult oysters is 25. So in the middle, where you have the US1 bridge, that's really that and down into the mid estuary is where the bulk of oysters are within this estuary. So it's getting a little bit high. It's been very dry. We haven't had a lot of rainfall for input for fresh water to come off of the landscape to provide that little bit lower. So that's what we're seeing there. Next slide, please. If you look at inflow over the past year, before the releases were made this past year, we didn't have releases coming to the estuary, and that's pretty cool. If you look at the two pictures down on the bottom, that is a representative of what the salinity gradient is within the estuary. And so you have the forks, and then you have the mid-estuary, and then it goes out into the inlet. And that mid-estuary wants to be in the color that it is right now. That's between about 518 or so. You know, that's a really good place for that part of the estuary to be in. And as you can see in the bottom right-hand graph, that is the optimal range for oysters. Adult oysters is between 10 and 25. And you see we're just starting to peak out of the top of that. So if the rains could come, that would be a good thing. Next slide, please. We do water quality monitoring. We take grab samples monthly at 10 different stations throughout the estuary. We're looking at total phosphorus and total nitrogen. And you see there's a dark black line in there that looking at the two seasonal averages over between 2019 and 2026. And you see we're below those averages most of the time. These averages aren't a criterion, though. These are just averages of what we are seeing. So there are numeric nutrient criterion for total nitrogen and for total phosphorus, and they are above those. But this is what we're seeing. This is the trend that we've seen through time. Next slide, please. This is a really cool project that we're doing, and we call it Close Halves, and it looks at the Caloosahatchee side, Lake Okeechobee, and our side. And it's trying to come up with a predictive model for algal blooms based on what are nutrients like in the lake, and then how does that translate into what type of deliveries are happening to either side, and how can we take data that we have, put it into this model to run different types of release schedules or see what kind of flows are coming through, and then have that put into a tool that then can predict 2 weeks out, what do we anticipate algal conditions are like? And there's also a seasonal component. What is it going to be like for the wet season? What's it going to be like for the dry season? It's a big collaborative effort with all of the different entities you see on the bottom. It's pretty amazing. We're in year 1 right now. We'll finish it up. It's a 2-year project in 2 years, and then we'll have this tool that is a really good predictive tool to say, what do we think algae conditions will be? And that's great for us to provide to the Army Corps. The Army Corps is thinking releases. We can run different scenarios and say, you know, when is the best time to do it? When is the best time seasonally to do it? And it'll really help with decision making. Next slide, please. We look at submerged aquatic vegetation, seagrasses. Everybody here loves seagrasses. You know, we need seagrasses in our estuaries for sure. So we do monthly seagrass sampling, or quarterly, I believe. And if you look at the trend on the top, you're looking at basically in this last year. So you have seagrass that grows during the summer, right? That's the growing season. And then seagrass coverage is going to decline through the winter months, and then it's going to come back and again in the summer months. And you look at 2 different stations there. The one station is, I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read, but thanks. Willoughby Creek, and then the one that's closer to the inlet. And Willoughby Creek is in the top. It's the green bars, and it's just it doesn't grow seagrass very well. There's a lot of wave energy there, but the one that's closer to the inlet, we have seen some pretty decent coverage. Now these bars are a little deceiving. You see these tall bars, and you're like, yeah, this is awesome. But you look at the percent coverage, and it's only 30% coverage. We would like to see a lot greater percent coverage there. And then when you take what that percent coverage is down at the bottom and you look at what species are there, the bottom green is Haliduli, shoalgrass. Shoalgrass has like a really wide range of salinity tolerance. So it's one that can go in there. It's called a pioneer species. It can go in there and make conditions right if salinity is right for other species that come in behind it. But Haliduli is really the dominant species that we're seeing for submerged aquatic vegetation or seagrass in the St. Lucie. Next slide, please. We just started a study a year ago looking at zooplankton. What's going on with all of the spawning of zooplankton within the estuary? And this is really important when we're talking about, again, releases. When is productivity happening in the estuary? So if we know it happens more like spring-ish time, and we're thinking about, Army Corps is saying we're going to release, you would want to do that before the productivity happens, because this is the base of the food web. This is important for just sustaining life within the estuary, right? So you don't want to be making large releases when zooplankton productivity is high. So this is our first year of doing this. And you see right now, if you look up and see what's the primary constituent, it's crab larvae right now. So there's a big crab spawn going on. So it's really neat data. As we get additional years, we'll be able to compare. We'll be able to say, what was it that was dry in the levels that was there? Was it salinity? Was it flow? And that, again, helps us with decision making. Next slide, please. Oyster recruitment, if you see that in April, it actually kicked off again here on this side. That's about the beginning of the oyster spawn. You'll see in 2022, the bar is very far on the left-hand side. That was a real banner year for oysters. You see that salinity, which is that gray within the bar, was in that higher salinity range, which is necessary for spat, the little guys that kick out there and want to land on the reef and grow. They like it a little higher. So, you know, we're hoping to see recruitment still continue as we're moving forward, and, you know, we can bring these data back to show. I show it every month at the governing board meeting, and we talk about what is going on with production, because it's really important. Next slide. Fish movements. There's a cool study we're doing right now. There's a transponder network within the estuary that all these different agencies have bought into. And you can put a transducer into a fish, and it can swim around. It goes by the transponder, and you can say, hey, there was a fish here. And it's pretty neat. So we're looking at fish movements, and we chose sheep's head and snook because they are highly estuarine dependent. They spend a lot of their time within the estuary, and you see those colored circles as it goes across, that which part of the estuary they were in. Were they in the North Fork, the South Fork, the mid estuary? And then during spawning, you see they all go more towards the inlet to go spawn. So it's just a neat study to say, how are these fish using the estuary? And again, how does that go to flows conditions that is able to support them? Next slide. And that's it. But I thank you. Just wanted to let you know what we're doing at the district to monitor ecological conditions in the estuary, so that information is available to help us best manage it for the health of the estuary.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Lawrence, appreciate it. Thank you very much. We don't take a lot of questions, but I did want to point out, I mean, the water quality monitoring that they do is tremendous, not just in our estuary, but around the whole water management district. They have that monitoring is the data that really needs to be used to implement and monitor the implementation of the basin management action plans, the BMAPs, the BMPs, best management practices, and other projects that actually are putting in place to reduce phosphorus, nitrogen, and other loadings into the estuary. The TMDL is set here, as you saw those seasonal graphs. The SCO3 station that Lawrence presented was right out here at Roosevelt Bridge. And it's still above that, even long-term seasonal average is still above those TMDL set for our estuary back in 2009 for both phosphorus and nitrogen. So it's the data that we really need to look at that they produce that really causes that. The other point I wanted to make out was that the graphics on the seagrass monitoring effort, we really appreciate them continuing those seagrass and oyster monitoring, but the seagrass station where they had that percent cover, which is about 18 to 20% cover, is that one station which is south of that that one spoil island. That's MC, I think that's MC 3, which is down there. MC1, which is north of that, was the little spoil island, the Boy Scout island, if you call it. That spoil island used to have a monitoring station. The district did north of that, but it's void of seagrass. So they shifted the monitoring station down south. What I like to point out too is that percent cover, what we want to look at is the green area inside of the Sailfish Point and the inlet there, which they have as mapped out as a base map kind of coverage for 2021. And we're hopeful we can continue to look at that base map and say, you know, how much seagrass have we lost? How much is recovering? How much is coming back? even though we keep that one sentinel site or monitoring site, which is really good. Same for oysters. Oysters used to be prevalent, and we're really glad they continue to monitor the spat coverage or the spat settlement, which is the spawning. And remember, we wanted not to have discharges, particularly during those spawn seasons, which is great. You saw a little bit of spawn happening for the oysters in our area, which is great. We want to continue to make sure we monitor that and have that. But also, again, the percent cover or the live versus dead shell cover on the base map would be good to kind of update and make sure those surveys are done too. So we appreciate your monitoring efforts and all that the district does. And welcome to the new communications director. Thank you. We'll move on to Lake Okeechobee. I know that Paul Gray couldn't be here. He basically is on the phone, but he can't really submit comments, but he writes them here, and I'm going to make sure. Paul says, okay, good news is the lake is dropping fast and gives more freeboard for the rainy season. But the bad news is it's too fast, dropping too fast for nesting birds and some other things. But lower water overall is a good thing. So unfortunately, the lake has been too high for too long, and we've lost tremendous amounts. In fact, practically all of the 40 or 50,000 acres of SAV, submerged aquatic vegetation, in the lake, which is terrible. We need to have the lake drop down, and we need to get it down and keep it down low for a while and let it recover. But it hasn't had that opportunity because the lake has been kept so high. So we are really, really hopeful we continue to have this drop in the lake. You know, unfortunately, nesting birds or others might have to adjust, but the idea is, hey, we've got to get the health of the lake back. When we say stop the discharges, we don't say, oh, just keep them in the lake and drown the lake. We want to stop them from this estuary, the other estuaries, but we want to send it south and get the lake where it needs to be for the health of the lake as well. So we're all concerned about that. And Paul, thank you for continuing to attend our meetings and get done. I want to go to Gil Smart for any state or federal legislation updates. Gil, do you have anything to bring up? Okay, state legislature is not in session until next, actually March and April this coming year. But I encourage everybody to meet with this local delegation. We brought up one of the representatives, state representatives today. Meet with them, talk with them, get ready for this session to come up. We want to get promoting good bills and good legislation and stop having to put all our energy into fighting bad stuff all the time. It's just really not good. I think the state could really do some good. Going on to coalition reports, we've got Rivers Coalition updates from River Kids. Casey, want to come up and give us a little update on River Kids? Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Casey Darling-Niffen, River Mom, along with Kelly Dore and Sabrina Romish, who couldn't be here today, but they are getting ready for the Toxic Trail Run. If anybody remembers, in the past many years, they've done a run from the Port Mayaca all the way to the beach, 37 miles in the end of June. That will be June 29th. So if anyone is feeling extra brave to go out the end of June and run, bike, or relay 37 miles along that route, please sign up on the Toxic Trail Run website, and we will also send an email out about that. There will be an opportunity for River Kids to cheer on runners at the intersection of Sewell's Point, where they will pass by. And by that point, I'm sure they will need some water and some encouragement to keep going. So we will make sure that they're out there for that. We would also love to see River Kids, as a youth advocacy group, we would love to see them write letters of support of their own for the EPA petition that we discussed today. They are just as much stakeholders in this community and in this process. And they have a lot to say about the waters when they can't swim and recreate. And I know my kids do. So if yours do as well, please reach out. We would love to get that going. I think we could have an informational session in an age appropriate way to let them know what's going on and have their voices heard as well. And I just want to call out one more time, Kat Villano, former River Kid, is here in the audience with us. She is now a water quality monitoring intern for the Loxahatchee River District. So again, I just want to thank her for being here. I want to thank her for continuing her commitment from River Kid to River Grown Up in her pursuit to keep our waters clean. So thank you all so much. And we will be sending out an email with more updates. So stay tuned.
Did you want to mention beach buckets?
You send it out an email.
Okay.
I don't have all the
Okay. All right, great. Super dupe. Yeah, we'll go on to kind of local estuary conditions and seagrass with Todd. We've got pretty much a good condition going on. As you know, when they stop discharges in the estuaries, about salinity is right here, about 26 parts per thousand, and out in the outer estuary, about 32 parts per thousand. As you know, that's in a good range for oysters and seagrass in both of these areas. And so we're grateful for having that and going to hopefully continue. If you've been out in the water, it's really clear. It's amazingly clear in the outer estuary. So enjoy it and celebrate it as we kind of move forward, and hopefully we'll see some recovery of the resources, oysters, seagrass, and others, but also we'll see a good spawn happening, and we'll get more of that going forward. Did you have any update, Todd, for seagrass, or did?
Yeah. I mean, on the seagrass front, you know, I'll often show a recent satellite imagery from my website, but it's been cloudy for the last couple of weeks, so there's nothing really new on that, and I haven't been out there. But like Mark said, the water is looking a lot better, that the discharges have stopped. Just kind of going down some things I say. Yeah, so here's the latest lake HAB image. So, you know, yesterday was clear, so you got a good image. And, you know, May is the month. You know, May, I always say the 4th of July is when the fireworks happen. It's literally been the 4th of July is usually about the peak of the algae season, from my observation. So we're approaching that. One little update on this stuff too. We're talking about total maximum daily loads and me trying to understand this. I put this on my website back last August. This is the data from the South Florida Water Management's annual report. I had started with the 2022 data, but now I've got the 2023 that was released recently, and it goes back 5 years. And they work on 5-year averages. So now that I have the 5-year averages, I want to be able to show that graphically too. And so I'll be adding, if I can get this. I guess I can't get this Zoom window out of my way here. Hold on. It wants to jump in front of my window. But I have you know, I'll be putting links on there like this where we'll be able to kind of show the trends for the estuary. But how do I get this thing out? Here we go. All right, it's out of the way. But yeah, so talking about the loads to the river. So you can click on here. And so like it's just saying C23 is 3.63 times what that target is for the St. Lucie River. So we have a way to go on that. I think that is it. There was some stuff last week because we were talking, just be aware of the vertical datums. I do have it on my website on that banner. I've got both the new datum and the old datum on there. But this was a map that I had on my computer. But if you remember, people were here, the laptop died, and I had to plug my laptop in over there. But this kind of shows you a heat map of how these vertical datums are different depending on where you are. So that's why it's a little confusing. It's not just a straight up number across the state. We're kind of on the high end over here on the East Coast. So I still have an email into the Army Corps on some backup on the lake difference because there's 8 stations that are used to calculate that lake level. So each station has a different offset, if that makes any sense. So that's it.
Yeah. So on that from Todd, basically the state and also the district and also the Corps are changing over to this new national datum of 1988 instead of the NGVD of 1929. So when they change over, you're going to see, when we're talking about the lake being at 13.36 feet, that's in the NGVD or the old datum. And so it's going to be a lot lower looking when we talk about that in You just have to remember, oh, okay, they switched over to a new reference point. So it's just, they're switching over to a new datum point or reference point to measure the height and so for the lake. So it's going to take us a while to get used to kind of that new number, if you will. So next time we come in next month and report the height, the elevation on Lake Okeechobee, it might be about what, 1.5 feet
Yeah,
different?
like you look at the banner right there. Right now it's at 13.32, and using the offset that the Army Corps is using, which
Yeah.
is 1.25. The district seems to be using 1.3, but that'd be 12.07 feet. So we're going to get used to this new number. That 12 is where we are today, as opposed to 13.
So don't be alarmed if all of a sudden somebody says, "Hey, the lake's at 12.2
but
feet."
this graphic just kind
in a
of shows
different
you
datum. Yeah.
This graphic just kind of shows you the Roosevelt Bridge, and not to confuse things, because this is not sea level. It's neither. And so you see this NAVD 88 up here. It's the mean sea level is right here on this graphic for our Roosevelt Bridge. This is the USGS site, that station that's sitting out there at the bridge fender. So mean sea level at the Roosevelt Bridge is 0.81 below this new NAVD 88 at the Roosevelt Bridge. I put an arrow in here just to show where it is. The NGVD, which was the old datum, is negative 1.46. So at the Roosevelt Bridge, sea levels in between the two. And that's what we're dealing with.
So, yeah, and so is the Corps, I think, too. They're going to put both up for a
It's
while.
been federal law for quite a long time that all federal projects have been done on the new datum. So I don't know how these guys do this stuff. They plan the C-44 reservoir using one datum, and then we, operate it looking at another datum.
So if you have any question, what number
They'll just convert them all.
They'll convert them all over probably. Yeah. Good question though. If you have any concerns or thoughts about it, let's get with Todd. Obviously, Todd can fill you in lots of detail about how this is working, or one of the agencies. I mean, either Lawrence or Major Bell from the Corps can kind of fill you in on those questions as well. We'll go into some, I don't think Jim's here for any Indian River Keeper comments, but member comments and stuff. I do want to say, I appreciate the district here and the Corps being here for the Indian River Lagoon South. They had a community meeting here and also one in Fort Pierce the night before. We appreciate the city of Stuart hosting it, but it was a kind of a community get together to understand where we are with the Indian River Lagoon South program. Many of us have worked on this since 2005 when it finally got authorized in 2007, and we're finally into implementing the components of the project, including the C-44 reservoir and STA, the C-23, 24 reservoirs and STAs. So this is going forward and moving forward on a progress schedule. Obviously, that it's a little delayed, and the integrated delivery schedule will tell you where these projects are and kind of how it's moving forward. But we're really should understand of where it's going and how it's moving along and what it's going to actually be doing for our estuary in the long term. So I appreciate those updates as they come forward from the district and the Corps. And also the district put out a list on Everglades projects. About 70 different projects since 2019 are either under groundbreakings, milestones, or completed since 2019, 70 projects. So they do a lot of work. They spend a lot of money, and so does the federal partners. So it's 50-50, but there's a lot of work going on for Everglades restoration projects. And part of it through the Indian River Lagoon South affects us in this estuary particularly. So appreciate that. I want to make one member announcement. Next month is June, is Oceans Month. We're having an Ocean Film Festival. There's a little flyer in the back. And you can pick us up, QR code. It will be right here at the Lyric Theater. There's about 10 different short films, which are really good about our oceans. And we're celebrating World Ocean Day, of course, on June 8th. So wear blue and tell two. So you wear blue, get out there and tell two people about the ocean and how important it is for the air we breathe, the life we live, and everything on this planet. So it's important to celebrate that during the month of June. And I'll turn it out to any other member comments, or we have one from Diane. Great.
I just want to remind everybody that the Rivers Coalition is supporter of the petition for the right to clean water. You may have signed it last year, but it did not get on the 2024 ballot, so we have to start over again. So please, there are some forms in the back, just on the other side of the store on the table. Take some, not just one, but for you, family members, friends, and then you can either return it here next month or mail it into the address on the form.
Thanks. Very good.
I'm also working with Diane and Carol Ann Leonard, and if you put your signed form in the manila folder out there, I will turn them into the supervisor of elections. She'll do it for St. Lucie, I'll do it for Martin, or you can bring any signed petitions back next month, and I will turn them in as well. Thank you. No, you can't reuse the same ones, and we also have a little bit of changes in the text of the amendment too, but it's minor.
Okay, so everybody want more info on that? Please see Diane and so forth. So any other member announcements? All right, so without further ado, thank you all for attending, and thank you agencies for coming and reporting, and thank you, Jason, for a special report on the algae. Thank you. Take care. Have a great day.